Welcome to the Ground and Pwn Podcast. It's a weekly show where we discuss all of the biggest topics in combat sports, gaming, entertainment, and plenty more. I'm Brian Shea, online content director at Game Informer, joined as always by my co-host Scott Fontana, the New York Post's MMA reporter. Since we're in a bit of a holding pattern in both MMA and gaming as far as big stuff is concerned, we're going to talk some evergreen topics this week. We've got a few topics that aren't really pertaining to the recent happenings in the games industry or the sport, but at the end of the show, we will be giving our spoiler-filled thoughts on the Halo TV show, which just wrapped up last Thursday. But for now, Scott, how are you doing? How was your week?
You know, I had a good weekend, actually, because I got back from a bachelor party in Ocean City, Maryland.
Oh,
had a good time.
My old stomping grounds.
And actually, you know what I was playing when we were down there, because my buddy who was the bachelor needed a little bit of time to recover on the second day.
Why would that
be? I don't know. We're old, you know, realistically. We're just getting a little older. Not able to roll as hard as maybe we used to. But he one of our buddies brought out the Switch, and rather than play anything new, we all just played Dr. Mario.
Dr. Mario? That's not what I expected you to say. I expected like maybe Mario Party, maybe a Mario Kart. But Dr. Mario.
Yes, whole lot of Dr. Mario.
The choice?
I never played a whole lot of Dr. Mario as a kid. I don't know if that was like your thing or anything you played as a kid, but so probably I've now played more Dr. Mario after this weekend than I had previously, like altogether.
That's such like a unique choice.
Mm-hmm.
Like why like what was the justification there? Was he just like, hey man, check out this Dr. Mario hotness?
No, I get the sense maybe they were playing it sometimes here and there, and I think one of them like got really hardcore into it because someone was setting it to like level like 16 or something absurd like that, and I'm watching them, and they weren't necessarily always winning, but they were performing better because they were just knocking out like 40 viruses compared to the other person who's playing at like level 5 and they only needed to get rid of 20. So they lost by 20, but it was like you did twice as well.
Man, like I never really got that much into Dr. Mario, but like when I did play it, like I remember thinking like, oh, this is really cool. I should get it more into this. And I never did. But like, yeah, like I don't know. I was always a Tetris guy.
Okay.
Did you ever play like Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine or Yoshi's Cookie or anything like that?
I had Yoshi's Cookie. I played a little bit of Yoshi's Cookie back in the day. I also had, for my Game Gear, I had Columns. Do you know Columns?
I do know Columns.
Similar, of course. And yeah, but I always thought it was kind of a pretty looking type of that. I mean, that type of game, especially on the Game Gear, because look, I don't know where you stood with Game Boy and Game Gear. Did you ever play Game Gear? Did you have Game Gear?
I had a Game Gear before I had a Game Boy.
Okay. So I did as well. I didn't own like a Game Boy proper. The first Game Boy I ever owned was Game Boy Color, and that was so we could play Pokemon when it was getting big, right?
Yep.
So I had my Game Gear. I still have it. I have the machine somewhere, although it doesn't work as well. I think I need to get fixed or something, or sell it, or I don't know. But
you always lost the battery covers.
I still have my battery covers.
Every handheld I've ever owned, the battery cover's just gone. I don't know what happened to them.
I don't know. That sounds like a you problem.
I mean, not the 3DS or anything, because that didn't have battery covers. It was just like plug it in and charge it. But
yeah, the Game Gear ate a massive amount of batteries.
What was it? 6 AAAs?
Yes.
And it lasts you like 3 hours.
Yep. Yeah, it was about it. I don't think I ever really put batteries in it very often. I was typically just like I would just plug it into the wall.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I didn't bring it with. I would bring it with me sometimes, but mostly I was playing it at home.
What were your go-to games on the Game Gear? Because I had like a weird, like a distinctly just odd group of games that I played in rotation. Like some of the usual suspects, but some that was just like for some reason I have like this weird memory of these licensed games.
So I had Columns, as we mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
I believe I had NBA Jam. So I played a little bit of NBA Jam on there too.
I never played the Game Gear version of NBA Jam.
I mean,
I didn't even know there was a Game Gear version.
It's very similar. It's got basketball players and all that. I mean, it's good. It was good. They made some Sonic games for that as well, if you recall. Do you remember
Big Sonic guy over here?
Remember there was a character in there called Knack?
Yeah, I do.
I remember he was like, "Oh yeah, it's not Knuckles now, it's Knack." I'm like, oh, that's cool. And Knack was not interesting.
In other media, he's known as Fang the Sniper.
Oh, they've changed him. Okay.
Yeah, they changed his name. Well, I mean, they changed Dr. Robotnik's name to Eggman, or they changed it from Eggman to Dr. Robotnik for the American market, and then later they uniformed it in the Dreamcast era.
Yeah, I was gonna say I didn't like that they did that either. First off, wasn't okay with that. He's still
his name was never Robotnik, like officially, like it was just in Sega of America because they thought that was a better name than Eggman. But he's always been known as Eggman in Japan.
No, doesn't matter to me. He was Robotnik when I was a kid. That's who he is.
So what I played, because big Sonic guy over here, I played Sonic the Hedgehog 2 on Game Gear. I played Sonic Triple Trouble. I played Sonic Chaos. Played Sonic Spinball. I actually prefer the Game Gear version of Sonic Spinball. Then you get over to the weird stuff. There was a Ren and Stimpy game that I played constantly. And I remember my parents were concerned about buying it for me. And they go, they remember they were asking the store clerk at Kmart before I was able to buy it. Like, hey, like Ren and Stimpy has some pretty like mature comedy in there. Like, well, is this like inappropriate for kids? And he's like, no, like Ren coughs up hairballs, but that's about it. And like Stimpy throws toothbrushes. And I'm surprised, like in retrospect, that the Kmart employee was that knowledgeable.
Okay.
But yeah, I got it. I played the crap out of that. I don't think it was very good, but I played that. I played the X-Men game, which of course, in typical 90s arcade style fashion, whenever you had to use your power, it hurt you. So like I was going on with Wolverine. It's like, oh, I want to use his claws. And every time you hit anybody with your claws or swung your fist with your claw, it hurt Wolverine and he lost health. And I'm like, this is so dumb. It's not fun.
He should regen health.
He should. And then finally, Mortal Kombat on Game Gear, the original Mortal Kombat on Game Gear. And the reason I was able to get that, I don't know if I've told this story on this podcast before.
No.
I certainly have told it to Ed Boon. But the reason that I could get Mortal Kombat on Game Gear is because it didn't have blood. Okay. So my parents were okay with me having that. However, through the lovely folks at either Game Pro or Electronic Gaming Monthly, I found that there was a blood code. I entered that, and then my parents caught me playing with blood code on, and I got Mortal Kombat on Game Gear taken away for a little bit.
Until you figured out that blood was something that we had to take seriously.
Yeah, exactly. And then I told Ed Boon this story, and he said, well, tell your parents I'm sorry. So I was like, yeah, this is the first video game I ever got in trouble with.
Did your parents forgive Ed Boon?
They did not.
Oh,
they still hold that grudge.
No, I get it.
No, fine. They thought it was funny that I told them that story.
But yeah, ultimately, going back all the way to Dr. Mario, of course, we kind of got off a tangent, of course, which was fun. But yeah, we put a little bit there. Of course, we went out and everything like that too. But that was actually the unexpected gaming turn of this bachelor party that I didn't really see coming.
What was the highlight of the weekend aside from the Dr. Mario competition?
Highlight of the weekend. I mean, I loved all the food that we had. We went.
So you're in Ocean City. Did you get any good seafood?
No,
you're not a seafood guy, are you?
I will eat certain seafood. I like a lot of different types of fish. I will eat. Let's see. I don't like to eat like crab out of the animal itself or lobster and that kind of thing.
Like picking crabs.
If you will put crab meat on food form or in food with me or into my food mixed in, as it would like to say, or lobster mac and cheese is a big thing. I love it.
Had some on Thursday or Saturday.
Nice. That's definitely one of my favorites. Actually, when I see it on the menu, I'm like, actually, I'm going to kind of get that, I think. But so I was very excited and I was a little disappointed with two food things that didn't happen. Right. So number one, because I went to Ocean City 10 years ago, so I had a couple things I was hoping to do again. Number one, Secrets. Secrets.
Of course.
Very famous place, right?
It's like a nightclub.
I went there with my wife before we were married 10 years ago. And on the menu, we just kind of went to eat and left, right? We didn't do the whole like sit in the ocean and do all that other crud. So I ordered off their menu at the time. I think it was like an appetizer, crab pizza. Now I don't know if you knew what this is, but crab pizza, the best way I can describe it is Domino's cheesy bread with crab meat.
Yeah, it's
amazing.
It's incredible.
It's truly incredible. And no longer on the menu.
Oh, no.
That broke my heart.
What?
That broke my heart. We didn't actually go to Secrets. I think they went the day before because I came a day later than they did. And so I didn't get the crab pizza. Obviously, I didn't get the crab pizza because it's not on the menu, but I didn't go there with them. And then I verified that it wasn't on the menu before I thought about going again. So I'm like, well, I'm not going now. I don't care. So I skipped that. That was one.
That's saving you time right there. Honestly. That's considerate.
You got to think ahead of these things. Obviously 10 years is a long time. At some point I was realizing like maybe I should double check. And fortunately I did. And number 2, the other one that I was hoping to get were pizza cones. Do you know what a pizza cone is?
Yeah, of course. Okay.
So pizza cones are gone. Not on the boardwalk anymore. I think it was at a place called Tiki Sunrise or something like that. It used to be there.
Was this a pandemic casualty? Did you find out?
I'm going to guess it was. I just said
taken so much from us.
Permanently closed. Yeah, it really did. And unfortunately,
did you get,
the real loss, of course, is the business owners who lost that business for one reason or another. Unfortunately,
did you get boardwalk fries?
No, not boardwalk fries, but there was a Tony Luke's location there. So I had that. I got a cheesesteak there with whiz on it. That was pretty good.
Okay. And, all right. Did you get a crab cake at any point while you were in Ocean City, Maryland?
I'm not a crab cake guy. I've tried it. It's just there's too much like mayonnaise and crap, right?
God,
isn't that what it is?
Breaking my heart here.
I'm sorry, sir.
I'm like Padme at the end of episode 3, just dying of heartbreak right now.
Childbirth?
Yeah, giving childbirth. Yes,
but at least they will save the galaxy
eventually. And one will be reanimated at the end of episode 9 because they just couldn't leave her out of the movie for some reason after she passed away. They just reused recycled footage, and it felt so awkward.
I'm pretty sure this is like a staple of Natalie Portman's careers. They find old footage of her, or they have
this is
voice or something.
Carrie Fisher that I'm talking about.
Oh, Carrie Fisher, yeah, that's right.
Because she passed away between episode 8 and 9
from my memory.
And then they had her come back. This is a completely different tangent, but it still drives me crazy how they use old footage of Carrie Fisher and just stitched it together into conversations, but they always had to like make the person who's alive and still acting steer the conversation towards something, very obviously steer the conversation towards something that she said. And it reminded me of that episode of South Park where Chef, like Isaac Hayes, that's the actor's name,
Isaac
right?
Hayes, yeah.
Where he had left South Park because he like did disagree with like their take on Scientology.
Mm-hmm.
And so he left the stat or the cast, and they wanted to wrap up the story. So they had him go and he joined a club that they thought was really stupid. And then throughout the entire episode, he's talking very robotically because they're stitching together different words he said over the course of his time. That's what it felt like to me in Star Wars Episode 9.
Except one's played for comedy and the other's not.
It was just so obvious. Yeah. And it was like, man, they could have just left her out of this one.
And how would if you're the actors in that scenario, like, okay, you're opposite Carrie Fisher here. Now I know she's dead, but you're gonna have to try to treat this as if she's here. And I know that's going to be weird and feel strange, but we don't care because it's Star Wars.
I mean, they probably treated it exactly like you would like a CG character. Like if you're
which is worse, by the way.
Yeah,
makes it
worse.
Which,
by the way, did you see that? Speaking of this actually segues perfectly into a piece of entertainment news. I know we're mostly gaming and MMA, but you and I both love superhero movies as well.
Mm-hmm.
And did you see this stuff about how Marvel had struck a deal with a company to basically resurrect Stan Lee through cameos in Marvel movies for the next 20 years?
Yeah, that's dirty.
Dude, I hate that.
Felt really wrong. And it feels like a continuation of everything that was happening at the end of his life where he was being exploited. But hey, why not just do it now that he can't hurt him anymore, I guess, right? Dude, isn't that what they're thinking?
It made me so happy, relatively happy when they had said that, following the absolutely terrible passing of Chadwick Boseman, that they weren't going to do a CG version of him in Black Panther 2.
Sure.
That made me very glad that they weren't going to do that. But I don't know, something just doesn't sit right with me about resurrecting for a sustained time. I know, I understand, okay, we have to wrap something up with this story or whatever, but I don't know. It just nothing about that feels good. I don't think.
No, it feels disgusting. It feels dirty. And honestly, when you see Stan Lee pop up in the movies, they're supposed to be like, "Hey, it's Stan Lee. Oh, that makes me smile. I like Stan Lee." Are you going to be saying that anymore? Or are you going to be like, "Why is Stan Lee here? He's been dead."
It's a different vibe now. I'm in the middle of an MCU rewatch right now, actually, and he's still popping up because I just watched the first Avengers movie. That's where I'm at in my MCU rewatch.
Okay. And
I got to anytime he pops up, it's a combination of laughing because all of his cameos are played for laughs, and also there's a brief aw, it's sad.
Yeah, no, I get it, but you know what? At least it's at the time he was still with us.
Yeah, exactly. But like,
It's a
I'm
very
saying
different
even
thing. Yeah.
even things where he was alive to film, and I'm sure I'm going to feel that same way when I go back and watch Black Panther as well, where
Sure.
it's like Chadwick Boseman's going to come on screen, and it's like, oh, that's a bummer. And the same thing like in Iron Man 2, Gary Shandling. Like, it's like,
Sure.
it's sad when like you're like, oh my gosh, so many of the actors in these movies have passed away. Like, not a lot of the main ones, but like a lot of like the side characters. It's like, wow, that they're no longer with us. They're no longer with us.
I tell you, so I had done. I don't watch pro wrestling now. I haven't watched live pro wrestling in 20 years, save for like a few minutes when I watched Stone Cold a couple months ago. I think a lot of us kind of tuned in for that out of curiosity.
I know I did.
So I had done a binge of Attitude Era WWF because that was when I watched, and I missed half of it. I kind of came in like 99, which was like midway through. So I was like, I'm going to watch the whole thing. So it took me like a year and a half. I'm just like passively watching it while I'm doing other things too. So I'm not like sitting there actively watching every single minute of this thing. But you know, when it's good, I'm tuned in. When it's not, I'm kind of off it, right? So during this rewatch here, it's just crazy how many people, individuals who were, you know, healthy and active and obviously massive, larger than life people are just dead now, like 20 years later, or
it's
even
really sad.
In some cases, they never made it to 2001 when I stopped watching this binge, right? And it ended it. You know, there was a match early on, like a very well-known quality match between Owen Hart and British Bulldog, who were, of course, some of the biggest stars from when we were kids, right? They had a great European title match. It was the first European title match. And this was in 1997. And neither one of them was alive within 3 years.
Oh my God.
It's just insane.
And
Obviously, what happened to Owen was incredibly
yeah.
tragic and totally preventable. And then what happened with Davey Boy Smith was the fact that he succumbed to, I believe it was heart issues, but I'm sure it had something to do with the lifestyle that he lived too, which obviously tragic in its own way, but even different and was Owen Hart's way. But it's just like, man, a lot of these guys are just gone. Yeah. And then a lot of them are still going now, which is weird too.
Yeah, there's not a lot of like in between. It's either they're still wrestling for like either WWE or AEW or whatever. Like,
right.
I went to an AEW show. Just again, I'm not a big wrestling fan either, but I went to an AEW show with some friends.
Sure, I would go to that too if like someone was just inviting me, right?
I think this was November of last year, and it was in Minneapolis, and there was like Sting was still there, like doing his thing, and I'm like, this is amazing. Like, my peak pro wrestling fandom was the late 90s WCW when it was like the NWO and the NWO
so WCW guy.
Yeah, I was always a WCW guy over WWF back in the day, but it was actually kind of cool because there was a bunch of UFC and former UFC guys, if you count CM Punk. So JDS was there, Andrei Arlovsky was there. It was kind of cool to see them in action. Like, even though I've seen JDS fight live before, I saw him get his head knocked off by Francis Ngannou. But like, you know, I always liked JDS. And CM Punk was also there, former UFC guy, obviously.
Did you see what happened with JDS Junior Santos on Friday?
At Eagle you FC? Hate to see it, man. You hate to see it because he seems dislocating like
his shoulder, I guess, when he throws a punch in a fight he was winning.
Yeah, he seems like such a good guy. I just want happiness and success for that dude. Like, he's like, I still laugh every time I see the thing where he was booed after he won, and he's like, "Why are you doing that?" like, oh. I actually tweeted a meme about that where it was like the two approaches to getting booed after you win a fight, and it was like him saying, "Hey, stop that! Why are you doing that?" And Al Iaquinta's response,
"Yes,
you're gonna boo me."
Al's response is easily the more famous of the two.
Of course, but I have a soft spot for JDS's response. But anyway, they actually did. Speaking of wrestlers who have unfortunately passed away, I believe it was Chris Jericho who did an Eddie Guerrero tribute, because Eddie Guerrero had actually passed away in Minneapolis when he did die.
I didn't know that. Okay.
So they did he did a tribute by ending the match on Eddie Guerrero's signature move.
Oh, nice.
So people loved that.
That's pretty cool.
And then like the whole crowd was chanting Eddie, which was kind of cool. Like, you know, and I remember Eddie Guerrero from the WCW days.
Yeah, I mean, I'm more familiar with him, of course, from his WWF days, because I really didn't watch WCW save for like maybe a couple minutes here and there before Raw would start. You know, once Raw was on, I was like, you know, game over, Nitro, see you later. But yeah, actually, I'm glad you brought up fighting though too, a little bit of UFC and that kind of thing, because there were some fights on Saturday night, and I think there's not a whole lot maybe that we can talk about from it because it really wasn't the most interesting of cards. There was some good fights there. I don't even know. Did you even watch it? Because it wasn't the most appealing card.
I did not watch it live.
Okay, that's fine.
But I did go back and I watched the fight of the night, which was Santiago Ponzinibbio versus Michel Pereira.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a good fight.
It was a good fight.
Like
absolutely.
The crazy fight that I was hoping for, like from start to finish, but that third round was just unbelievable.
No, I think the fight delivered. It doesn't need to be, I think we can want it to be something, but as long as it still entertained you, it's like good enough,
No, absolutely. I'm not saying anything bad about that fight, aside from the fact that we didn't get a Michel Pereira backflip.
Right. So did you only watch that one? Did you watch a couple other fights?
That's all I watched.
Okay.
And then I saw the finish, the elbow. Who was the guy who elbowed?
Chidi Njokuani.
Yeah.
The standing elbow that just flattened Duško Todorovic in the fight right before that, actually. That was, I think those were the two fights that if you had to only watch two fights from this card, I would recommend. So if you're sitting at home, you're a fight fan, and you missed the card as well, for one reason or another, maybe you were at a bachelor party, maybe you just had other things to do, I would say those two fights are worth watching. I wouldn't necessarily go back and watch Holly Holm against Ketlin Vieira because, one, not a very interesting fight. Number two, it seems that this is another one of these fights that triggers all of the people to go crazy about robbery. And it's all over this third round that was split among the judges. And I don't need to go deep into it. I have a different podcast where we go deep into judging. But I would say, I hope if you end up watching this fight, which I don't even recommend, if you go back and watch this fight, just understand that round 3 is not very compelling. And it's not very interesting, and it's pretty close. And the woman who got 2 out of the 3 scorecards is the one who's doing more damage. And that's what you want from a fight, right? Like, you're more of a fan than in media, of course, in this. But when you're watching a fight, who do you want to win the fight? Is it the one who's leaning someone up against the cage, or do you want it to be someone who's landing the more like heavier strikes that's like trying to hurt them?
Well, haven't they recently clarified like the scoring criteria, like in recent years, to like
not
be
even
like
recent?
damage?
It was like 6 years ago. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm saying recent in
Sure.
like terms of the overall sport, because like
course.
It used to be like, all right, well, if you scored a takedown and your opponent didn't score any takedowns, you have a good chance of winning that round. But now I think like they've updated the judging criteria in the past decade, where it's like damage should be more heavily considered than like control or like octagon control or control of their
octagon
body.
Control doesn't really come into it at all. But what I'm
was
really
that like
asking
a tiebreaker at the very end, right?
Yeah, it never comes into play. People think it does, but it really doesn't. Yeah. Oh yes, sir. We're gonna teach you along the way. Not today.
Well, I just thought it was like a very low priority. Like if everything else is exhausted, like we'll look at octagon control.
But it never happens.
Okay.
Just because I do talk to officials. And
they're like a 10-10 round.
It's literally, there's no 10-10 rounds. There's no, the only thing you need to know if you're sitting at home trying to like say, oh, I'm scoring this fight. If you want to know how to score the fight, literally all you have to think about is effective striking and grappling. Everything else, the judges will never use.
Okay.
Almost never. If you think they're using it, think again. That's what I'm saying. But anyway, what I'm really asking you in particular, sir, forget about what the criteria even says. What would you want the criteria to say? Do you want
damage?
What do you want it to value? Exactly. And it does.
Yeah.
That's the thing. But I think a lot of people would say the same thing. And yet a lot of people would watch round 3 of that fight and they would say, oh, yeah, Holly Holm should win. But why? She was leaning her up against the cage for 2.5 minutes. She lands some strikes here and there. Like you can defend it either way. Like there's ways to score. A lot of these rounds can be scored either way. Right. So it's just crazy how many people got so mad about this fight. And I think the reason why people get mad about the judging in particular in a fight like this is because they weren't entertained by it in general and don't have anything else to talk about. But they feel like they got to talk about something.
Well,
so like, let's just complain about judging.
People are still saying Rose didn't lose that fight, which is like,
Rose.
There's nothing else to talk about on that fight.
Pat Barry's certainly saying that.
Pat Barry is certainly saying that, which I mean, even Rose came around on the idea of like, oh, I didn't do what I needed to do.
No, she didn't. Yeah. I don't think either one of them did what they needed to do.
No.
Which is why when you do that, that's when you really don't want to leave it in the hands of the judges. Neither you did what you were supposed to do. Now you're in the trouble of like, I didn't do anything. I don't know what the heck's going to happen. So you got to at least go out there and put your best effort forward.
Yeah, but like one thing I did notice in the Pereira fight and Ponzinibbio was like there were a lot of canvas slips, and I've noticed that being a trend. Like, didn't Aljo also say like when he was like trying to fight Jan the second time, like he was slipping on the canvas a lot? And I've heard a lot of people say like, "Hey, I'm slipping on the canvas." Like, has the UFC like just sold so much ad space that they don't have like proper grip on the canvas anymore? Like, it's looking more like a NASCAR than ever before. Like, is that causing all these slips?
I don't know. I mean, it's a good question. I don't think so. I mean,
are they still spraying down the cage with like the anti whatever stuff, like the COVID stuff that they were spraying? Like, remember it used to be like in between fights, you'd always see like them like doing like the cage side reporting, and in the background you'd see the blasting of the antibacterial whatever all over the cage. And I remember some fighters saying that it was slipping.
I more distinctly remember when they were on Fox, and it was like sort of like a network TV thing that they would like spray down the like patches of blood to make it look less bad.
That's right.
It would like paint it over or whatever, which is so weird. It's like, it's blood sport. What are you trying to do here? Oh my God. But yeah, that look, on the whole, this entire event really, the prelims were good. The prelims were pretty solid. The main card had its moments, but ultimately, yeah, this definitely wasn't the one that I would say was totally worth your time. I think you made the right choice in this being a weekend where you didn't necessarily prioritize the fight night.
But now we don't have anything next week.
No, we don't. It's a nice little break, actually. I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always in favor of taking 1 week off. It's when they take more than 1 week off in a row. Like, it used to be like December. At the end of December, we'd always have a huge card, and now we just get a break.
We typically get, yeah, you're right. I mean, they've had that at times where they've done that like either January 1 or December 30th. I think they like to give maybe their staff like a month off. This is just kind of a guess. I'm interpreting this based on the scheduling. It does make sense because the rest of the year is just brutal. So give them a month off, let everybody kind of recover. Maybe they get the chance to, as a team, kind of reevaluate how they want to come into 2022 or 23, whatever the new year may be, right? So it makes sense. I'm excited to not have live fights that I need to watch this weekend. I like watching fights, but I also like that we get some built-in time to kind of miss the sport a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. And like, especially important when we have been kind of not putting our best foot forward with the fight cards that we're getting. Like, you know, I rated the last week's pretty high, but this week's, you know, we were rating like 3, 4 on our scale.
Yeah. We were terribly thrilled for this.
When it starts getting watered down like that, and like how this next one kind of looks, which we're not going to get into it right now, but I'm just looking at the next one. Yeah, there's a couple bangers, but there's
Jairzinho Rosenstrike is fighting Alexander Volkov at the top, which I want to say it was Caposa at Grabica Hitman on Twitter. I want to say he was saying something like it felt like we've seen that Rosenstrike against Volkov, a headliner, like at least 2 times before.
It does feel that way.
It does kind of feel that way, yeah. Because at least we've had them separately a lot of times, and it feels like Volkov just fought like a week ago, but it was longer ago. It was against Tom Aspinall, and what was it? I guess it's probably 2 months now.
All I'm saying, that card might test the lower limits of our score system there, but we'll get more into that next week.
Yeah, we can save it, right? You know, I don't even really have that much in the gaming, or excuse me, on the fighting front that I really wanted to talk about. I think we covered everything. You didn't even watch much of it, so there's not much I can kind of bounce off you. Let's switch over to games. What have you been playing, sir?
So I've been playing a few things I can't talk about, which I'm looking forward to talking about at some point in the near future. However, one that I can talk about is a game called Mini Motorways. Have you ever played Mini Metro or Mini Motorways?
No, I'm not familiar.
So they're phone games. So, I mean, they're also on some consoles, but they started off as, Mini Metro started off as a Steam game, and then it got like a lot of traction on mobile, and it actually became one of my favorite mobile games of all time.
Okay.
And it's not like a microtransaction laden game or anything. It's like you buy it, you purchase it with a set price, and then you get the game, and it's not going to ask you to drop a bunch of money in the future. So it's like, it's an anomaly in that way, because you know, I play Marvel Strike Force as well, and that is the exact opposite. That one you download for free, and every time you go to a different screen, it's saying, hey, drop $60 on this. Those aren't microtransactions, those are macro transactions.
That is a macro transaction. Yeah, absolutely.
But Mini Motorways is the follow-up to Mini Metro. Mini Metro has long been one of my favorite mobile games ever. And basically with Mini Metro, you choose a real world city. So you can choose like Tokyo or Beijing or Moscow, and it like different points of interest pop up on the map over the course of time, and you draw subway lines to connect these people. So like, all right, this is a triangle subway stop, and then people will pop up, like passengers will pop up and like in the shapes of triangles and squares and circles and diamonds, and you have to give them some way with your subway system to get to their destination. So a triangle passenger wants to go to a triangle destination. Mm-hmm. So like, and there's multiple triangle destinations, just they have to get off at some point on one of those destinations. So you just have to make sure that they have the subway line that like, even if they're through connections, they can get to there. And you don't want the stations to back up too much, or else it's game over. If a station gets too crowded, it basically, the subway system collapses essentially. But it's like,
I would argue, having been in New York City many a time, that's not what happens. People just complain and they hate it. But anyway.
But yeah, so that's the game over state, is when one station gets too crowded.
Okay.
So Mini Motorways is the follow-up to that game, and that one you are drawing, it's the same thing. You choose like a real world city, and they use like the real like topography of it. So if there's mountains or rivers or lakes or anything like that, you have to work around that. This time, different color places pop up, different color houses and different color like office buildings pop up, and you have to get the red people, the red colored people to the red buildings, mm-hmm. and the blue colored people to the blue buildings, and you have to make sure that like traffic doesn't get too congested, because this one you're drawing roads, you're not drawing subway systems.
Right. Okay.
So we went from public transit to individual transit, and you have to make sure that your houses have good routes to the buildings they need to get to. They're not getting too congested, so you can have like traffic circles and bridges and tunnels and like motorways that make it so you can alleviate traffic by like connecting things through highways across the map. And it's really fun. I'm having a really great time with it, and it's almost meditative, but then it gets super stressful at the end. Is like,
I was gonna say, it doesn't sound like it would necessarily be meditative.
If you're kind of avoiding, like, calming at first.
Yeah,
because at first it's like it's just such a slow build, and then like you think you have it all under control, and then like a small tweak that you made causes a huge traffic jam, and then suddenly nobody's getting to their place in time, and like it's just a lot of fun until you get to the end, and then it's like super stressful as you try to figure it. It's almost like Tetris, where at first you're like, oh, this is a nice like relaxing puzzle game, and then as you like climb up to the top, you're like, oh my god, like my heart is racing, is basically how it feels.
I will say Dr. Mario did not instill any sort of calming influence when we were playing. It was definitely competitive, and I was like, oh man, especially on the Switch controls, especially the Joy-Con minis, like if you're using just the mini one individually, with my adult hands, it's not the greatest to use the stick to try and move things around. Sometimes I'd accidentally just send something way to the bottom really quick, and I'm like, no, that's not what I meant to do. I meant to go left, because you need the D-pad.
Yeah, it's funny because there's an image that I use every chance that I get on GameInformer.com. I haven't used it in a while, actually, but whenever I'm writing a Nintendo story and I don't have like a good image, like if it's like Mario Strikers Battle League, for example, I'll use an image from that game. If it's just a general Nintendo thing, right at the launch of the Nintendo Switch, John Cena did a promotional thing with them, and it's all these images are available on their press site, but there's all these photos of him playing with the Switch controller. And, he is an enormous man.
Yes.
And to see him, like this giant man holding the tiny little Switch controller, is just the funniest thing. So I always will use the picture of John Cena playing the Switch whenever I get a chance.
Did I tell you yet, by the way, that I just started watching The Peacemaker?
Oh my God, dude. It's one of my favorite comic book things ever.
Okay, I'm about 3 episodes in. I know it's 8 overall, so
it gets better and better as the season goes on. I'm excited to hear your full thoughts. Like I didn't think that I would care. Like I loved the Suicide Squad. I love James Gunn's The Suicide Squad. I thought it was one of the better DC movies that's ever been put out. I thought it was just relentlessly fun. The characters all did great. Idris Elba and John Cena played off each other so well. Margot Robbie's fantastic as Harley Quinn. And then the other characters are all great as well. Ratcatcher 2 was a surprise favorite of mine.
Okay, yeah, I think that's fair. I liked her.
And King Shark is fun, and that's voiced by Sylvester Stallone, which is funny.
Was it Stallone?
It was.
Oh my gosh.
but yeah, all those actors and those characters were great in that movie. But like Peacemaker was like one that I was like, I'm not really too on fire about this character. He was great in the movie, but like I think I was fine with like wrapping up his story in the way they did in the Suicide Squad. And then you get to the show, and I'm like, I like this even more than the Suicide Squad.
Okay.
Like I think it's one of my favorite comic book like TV shows of all time.
What are your favorite? Because there's a few that are on my list. This Peacemaker was one of them. I haven't watched The Boys yet. I haven't watched.
Dude,
what's the animated one that's also on Amazon?
The animated. Oh, Invincible, or
yes, I think Invincible is the name.
I haven't watched that one either.
Okay, yeah, I haven't watched.
I like
The Boys.
Have you watched the Umbrella Academy?
No, I didn't watch Umbrella Academy. That one, for some reason, it never appealed to me, and I don't know why.
It's fun. It's a lot of fun, especially the most recent season. Like really kind of leaned into like just the shenanigans and like kind of the over the top nature of it all. Like,
okay.
They're in that season, like it's like a bunch of time travel and like they're trying to stop the JFK assassination. Like it's a wild time. Like most of it is taking place in modern era, but like there is some like time travel elements throughout. But like the last season really leaned into it, and it was a lot of fun.
I do watch, and it's still going on right now, Young Justice.
Okay, I haven't seen that.
Young Justice at all? You never watched the old season? Oh, it's a really good show. I didn't really love it at first. Like I gave it a chance when it was on at first, season 1, like during the time, like 10 years ago, more than 10 now. And I thought it was like, okay, it's fine. I'm not really gripped by it. I love Justice League and Justice League Unlimited and that kind of thing. But Young Justice didn't grip me. It's really good. You need to give it a chance. I know there's a billion shows out there.
Is that animated?
It is animated. So,
okay.
They're 20-minute episodes. It's easier to kind of just binge through and, play through it very quickly. They're on I want to say this is season 4 right now. And I'm near the very end of that. But it's really just a terrific series. They do a good job telling some stories with characters that were underutilized for a while and that kind of thing. There's like, Dick Grayson, obviously he's got a lot of stories being told, but there's Miss Martian. There's Connor Kent, Superboy, all these people. Aqua Lad, I believe he was Aqua Lad and now he's Aquaman. At one point or another, what's his name? Calderon. Do you know DC characters that well?
Have you, this is related, I promise. I'm not just blowing you off here. A lot of those characters are in Titans as well. Have you seen Titans?
No, I have not.
It's on HBO Max. It used to be like on the DC streaming app, whatever. I think it was called DC Universe.
Yeah,
like had like the Swamp Thing show and everything.
Yeah, they merged everything now. Yeah,
but everything's over on HBO Max now. Titans is like a dark take on like the Teen Titans property. And it's live action. And trust me when I say the first season CGI is some of the worst I've seen since like the PlayStation 2. It's so terrible when like Beast Boy turns into like an animal. Like it's garbage. Or when like there's a stunt that they couldn't do in real life, so they just did it CG. Like
that's almost exciting to see how bad this gets.
It's so terrible, but like it was a success, and like it's all about like Dick Grayson and everything, and like he's the main character.
He says F
like,
Batman in there, right?
No, he's Robin at first, and then if you know anything about the character arc, he eventually turns into another character. But
well, no, what I was saying is I remember there was some sort of like famous thing that he said, and it was like F Batman.
Oh yeah. I'm sorry, I thought you said he is Batman. No, yeah. I mean, that's the first thing I think he says in the entire show is F Batman.
Boy,
because like, yeah, it's very like edgy for the sake of edgy, but also it's a lot of fun too. Like it's a really fun thing, and like once they introduce like Starfire and Superboy and everything, like they really go off to the races with like, all right, we're just going to do some really off the wall stuff, and like Raven is another main character in it. So like if you like the Teen Titans property and you want something a bit more mature, like that's a good place to start.
I also heard Doom Patrol is supposed to be pretty good.
That's a spin-off of it, yeah. I've only watched, no, I haven't watched the show itself, but they have a crossover episode, I think in season 1, where like they just kind of stumble upon the Doom Patrol house, and like they're like, people say that the Doom Patrol show is a lot of like fun. It's not like the same like action-oriented show that Titans is, but like people really love Doom Patrol. And I think both Umbrella Academy and Doom Patrol are written by Gerard Way of My Chemical Romance.
Interesting. Like
so I interviewed him at San Diego Comic-Con 2016, and like this was right after like the leaks that like MCR might be getting back together had come out.
Okay.
And like the publicist was like, we are only talking about comics. We're not talking about music. But I snuck in a few music questions anyway, as soon as like the publicist walked away a little bit.
Well, that's the way it works. I mean, you gotta do it. Like,
but,
you can't just be like, sorry, you can't ask questions about that kind of thing. It's like, well, I don't want to do that now.
I asked Gerard Way because I was like, he actually went to school to be a writer and an artist.
Interesting.
And I asked him like, oh, what came first? Being a musician or being a writer or like into comics. And he's like, oh, I actually went to school for that. And then like the band got unexpectedly big. So I just kind of put that career on hold. So now like that MCR is on break. I'm doing this thing. But it's nice to be able to afford to do that too. Yeah, it's nice to be able to just be like, oh yeah, now I have like, apparently I'm like in one of the biggest bands in the world, so I guess I'll put my other career on hold. Yeah, very nice. But yeah, like I asked him like what like are there, because the interview was arranged by DC Comics, so we were specifically talking about Doom Patrol, and he was talking about like how that is like his dream characters to write. Like he didn't want to write like Batman, he didn't want to write Superman, he wanted to write like kind of the more off the wall, like not fully explored characters, and I thought that was interesting. I'm not I honestly couldn't even name a My Chemical Romance song. I remember what they looked like because I remembered calling Peter Parker in Spider-Man 3 My Chemical Spidey. Oh my god. Tell me I'm wrong, first off. No, you're not wrong. Not at all. But yeah, so I'm not as familiar with the catalog of My Chemical Romance necessarily, but that's cool. It's interesting to hear that somebody would be, and I'm not surprised necessarily, just I guess judging a book by its cover, I'm not necessarily surprised that he would rather tell stories about not Batman or Superman, but someone else that maybe other people aren't talking about. I asked him I'm trying to bring up the quote here. I asked him an interesting question about, because, My Chemical Romance has done concept albums, which if you're familiar with the concept of a concept album is it's telling a story from the first song all the way through the end, the last song. And I asked him what the difference between writing a comic and writing a concept album was. And, by the way, before he was writing comics, he was an intern at DC Comics. Interesting. And he went to school for visual arts and he graduated with a cartooning degree, which, it's interesting that, but yeah, like he said Doom Patrol is his main thing. He said, but when I asked him about the process of creating a concept album versus writing a comic, he said it's similar in that you're basically creating worlds and then you're building worlds, and then they start with an idea or a sentence or a phrase, and then you develop drawings. I did the same thing with Young Animal and all the teams. I just sort of sat there with these initial thoughts and ideas, and the teams jammed together and started making drawings and started making scripts. And then all of a sudden we had this world that we had built together. Building a concept album is similar to building a graphic novel. That's cool. So that was just kind of like, I don't know, that was one of my ways of like asking about music. Cause it's like, of course, like I'm Gerard Way, one of like the defining frontmen of my like high school years. It's like, of course I'm going to ask a little bit about music. Sure. Why not? And you're I'm not as much of a music guy too. Like I'm really not. So I'm sure you're more into music just in general than I am. Oh, and it's funny. You've got some guitars behind you in your little recording studio house, and I do not have musical talent. But here's the funny thing: when I asked him about his, we'll move on from this after this. But I asked him, I was like, "Did you ever think that after like going after your dream of making comics, then all of a sudden you'd become a big rock star, like which is a dream of so many other people? Because like his dream growing up was I want to make comics, yeah, and then suddenly he's a rock star, which is so many other people's dreams." And he said his main takeaway from becoming a rock star was like, oh, cool. Now I can break into comics easier, which is so funny to me. That's fun. That is fun. Yeah. I like that. But we've got some gaming proper stuff to talk about. Well, I should tell you too. What are you playing? What are you playing? I am still playing more of Cyberpunk 2077. I have finally met Keanu Reeves' character. Johnny Silverhand, baby. I got through I guess it was essentially a prologue I was playing, right? And I didn't realize it was actually a pretty decently lengthy prologue. And and then you really jump into the story. I guess technically it's Act 2 is when I jump in. There's only 3 acts, and the first part, it was pretty meaty, and I guess that's the first of 3. So yeah, I'm interested where it's going now. It's I'm, without spoiling too much, I'm now at the part where Keanu Reeves' character is much more a part of what's going on in the events of the story. So yeah, that's really where I'm at. I'm about to leave my apartment with this character in mind, and we'll see where it goes. But now I think I'm finally past like learning systems and being introduced to systems, that kind of thing. So it's really like I can just play the game. Yeah, it took a long time. That's one thing I'm not necessarily in love with this game, is how long it took to really explain all the systems to me. Yeah. there's a lot going on, and you know, I don't know. Like I most of my memories of Cyberpunk 2077 are from the month that it came out, and I was not the biggest fan, and mostly because there were a lot of glitches, but also I wasn't a fan of some elements of the story, even though it largely landed on me. But like, I want to go back and play this game so badly now. It's just like I look around, I'm like, well, with what time?
With what time?
Like,
yes.
Even though there's no games coming out right now, I've been so incredibly busy. And but yeah, Johnny Silverhand is a great character, and I think that I actually got into his band, like the fictional band of Samurai. I'm actually like, I love like a couple of their songs. I put them on my workout mix and everything. Like, I dig that music a lot. And it's because it's by a legendary punk, like a hardcore band called Refused. They brought a band called Refused in to record music as this band, and it's completely different from their normal style, because like this is like kind of like hard rock, heavy metal kind of style that they do in Samurai, but like Refused is like kind of like hardcore and like punk, which is like completely different style from what that. But like, I really dig like their work as Samurai. It's kind of funny.
Like I said, you are more of a music guy than myself, sir.
Oh, I absolutely am. I mean, that's how I got my start. Before I wrote about video games, I wrote about music.
Right. Yeah, I knew that about you. What was your favorite like thing to kind of cover, I guess? Like what genre?
It's always rock. I mean, rock was the
rock's
entire foundation of it. Yeah, but like, you know, I was honestly just reaching out to artists on MySpace and being like, hey, can I interview you for this website? And like most of the time, I would say I was left on red. But like every once in a while, a big name artist would get back to me. Like I got Miles Kennedy. I got who's the singer of Alter Bridge and Slash's singer. And very briefly, it's reported he was the singer of Led Zeppelin. But and then Ray Luzier, who is the current Korn drummer. And then the Tommy DiCarlo was another one, who is the touring singer of Boston. Whenever Boston goes on tour, they bring him now, because unfortunately the original singer of Boston is dead. But yeah, so like I got some names, nothing like I wasn't interviewing Jimmy Page or anything, but like, yeah, there's some people that are still to this day some of my favorite musicians.
You know, to kind of steer it back to gaming here, because I did kind of want to get your thoughts on this too, because I actually have some thoughts. They had released information now that there's going to be, as we know, PlayStation Plus is changing. It's merging with PlayStation Now. It's going to be its own thing. It's going to be a little different now, and they're adding a bunch of classic games to the mix. But not only that, the news here, Brian, is that they are adding trophy support to some classic PlayStation 1 games, right?
Yeah, so the one they initially reported was Siphon Filter. I'm trying to bring up the story here.
That's the one I saw too. That one excited me, because I actually kind of wanted to play Siphon Filter. I bought it for PlayStation 1, right? With the mind of playing it on my PlayStation Vita. And I don't think it works very well on PlayStation Vita, because obviously you only have the one set of triggers, and then there's like the back touch pad that you can use for like the R2 and L2. And it's just not wieldy. I don't like any controller where I need to do that for, especially when it's like anachronistic and it's trying to like make up for the fact that there were buttons. Like newer games, actually PlayStation Vita games will at least incorporate it in ways that make some sense, but it's hard to kind of shoehorn it.
Yeah, it really is. But like, it's funny because Siphon Filter is one of my first games I ever played on my PS1. And it was because it came with the Pizza Hut demo disc that I got when I first got my PlayStation 1.
What is the Pizza Hut demo disc, sir?
You used to be able to go to Pizza Hut, and if you got like a personal pan pizza or whatever, they would also include a demo disc for PlayStation 1 back in the day.
I remember this.
Like, this was like whenever PlayStation 1 was like first hitting. Like, I remember because I bought it because I wanted to play Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, because I played it at my grandmother's house when my cousin came over for like Thanksgiving or something.
Okay.
And he brought Tony Hawk's Pro Skater and his PlayStation 1. And I was like, well, I need this game. So I went and got a PS1 like eventually. And I remember getting the PS1 demo disc from Pizza Hut, and Siphon Filter was one of the games on there. And I just played that demo on repeat, but I never played the full game.
The first PlayStation 1 experience I ever had, it's my very first time playing any PlayStation console, would have been 1996. No, 90. Actually, it was 98, I think. And I went over to, we were staying with a friend in St. Louis, and they had a Super Nintendo, or not a Super Nintendo, excuse me, a Sony PlayStation, and I played the heck out of Command and Conquer.
Oh my
PlayStation 1. I was playing that into the ground. I was like, this is great. I'm gonna farm Tiberium like until the sun comes up, the sun goes down. That was my thing. I remember also playing the Street Fighter movie game on that one. Not a very good fighter, not worth revisiting. It's definitely not mainline by any stretch. But yeah, it's weird to play some of those games, and especially to think back to that time, because a lot of the PlayStation 1, it was interesting console, and it birthed a lot of things that went on to be some great stuff. But it's a very hard console. Even at the time, there was some stuff about it that was kind of weird, but now it's like you can almost not play most of those games.
Well, yeah, because the early transition to 3D was so awkward. Like going back today to play those games, like it's a very rare exception that those games are still like very playable. Like a lot of them are still playable, but it's like, oh, this isn't nearly as fun as like the stuff, because we figured out a lot of the best practices for creating a game in 3D.
Right.
But like Super Mario 64 is one of those games. It's like it still feels good to play, even though there's still some pain points at this point. Like, we're coming up on
camera
25 years
even then.
Yeah. But I found on Reddit a Pizza Hut demo disc. It's not the one I was talking about, but I did have this one as well. This one had Crash Team Racing, Final Fantasy VII, Ape Escape, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, and Cool Borders 4.
That's a pretty good demo disc.
It is.
That's a really high quality demo disc. Shout out to Pizza Hut.
Yeah, they were.
Nobody out pizzas the Hut, as they say, except for real pizza.
A lot that out pizza.
Yeah, there's that
actually. Maybe the Siphon Filter one was from like a different magazine or something, but whatever. Did you also see the thing that like there seems to be a possibility? I think you may have even sent this to me, that games that you did purchase that were like PS1, PS2 games from like the Vita era or the PSP era might be playable. Like you might just be able to buy them.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to figure out too. I'm very excited for this. I don't know what it means, if it's like it's only certain games, the ones they make available or what have you, but like I own Siphon Filter, right?
Yeah.
So I might not need, if I understand correctly, I might not even need a PlayStation Plus like subscription that would include that game to play it, because it is, I guess it's already, the emulation is there and they're recognizing that you own this game. So I'm interested to see what that means. I would love if it meant literally anything you bought from PlayStation Network, which in theory it should, because I own it. You have a record of it. Because if I can do that, they I believe it includes PlayStation or PSP, PS1, PS2, all those things that you could have bought for. I have on PSP in my collection Def Jam Fight for New York, the Takeover.
How does that play, by the way?
I mean, it plays similar to the other one. There's a couple of characters that I think are not in there, and I think there's a couple of venues that aren't in there, and then there's, I think, some that are actually added. So it's almost like it makes up for what's not there for what they added. It's a weird kind of space to be in, but I mean, I played it on my Vita I was playing on my Vita because I put it on there, and it would work. And I was enjoying the heck out of it on my commute for a little while. So I would love to play it on my PlayStation 5, this old PSP game, right? I can't wait to be able to play that if that is possible. Now, I don't think it necessarily is. I'm not holding my breath for it. But if it is, oh my gosh, the recommendations for PlayStation Plus that you'll get out of me, if I can do that, I will be very, very praiseworthy of this new endeavor.
Did you see the list of PlayStation games that are included in like the tiers?
I did, yeah. It seems like it's incomplete still, right? They're adding more as they go. Obviously, there was a couple they added in the recent days that leaked, right?
Yeah, that was like Ridge Racer 2 and something else.
I was Oddworld, Abe's Odyssey.
Oddworld, yeah, which I was never a big Oddworld fan.
Yeah, I couldn't. It just never caught me.
Yeah, but yeah, the current list is pretty rough. Like it's not going to make me drop more money for my PlayStation Plus subscription. I'll tell you that.
No, not on its own, for sure.
No, you need more games.
Although I did
continue adding games.
Remember, I did the thing where I bought the PlayStation Now subscription for a year, and I understand that will convert.
And they did the Netflix though. They pulled a Netflix where they were like, remember, like a few years ago, Netflix shared like love is sharing your password or something like that.
Yeah.
And now Netflix is like saying like basically we're gonna not let you share passwords going forward.
Mm-hmm.
PlayStation advertise that, hey, if you buy a PlayStation Now subscription, it'll convert to whatever the thing is,
right?
Like whatever the main thing is. Now they've revoked that. So like, I mean, it should work for people who've already done it.
Yes.
But if I were to go to try to do it today, it would not work.
Yeah, I think it was kind of like you had to get it before you could. And now, yes, they were grandfathered in. The people who took advantage, like myself, but obviously, like there was a boat that left, and if you weren't on it, you missed it. Obviously, so disappointing. But for me, I'm happy because I'm going to take advantage.
I'm very happy for you.
Yeah. So, which is a good thing because you don't seem super enthused about trying the high end version.
I want to, but it's like, it's not compelling enough for me to drop extra money on it because, like, you know, I have a lot of the PlayStation first party games and like a lot of the games that I think are going to be on it. I either have it on PlayStation or Xbox for third party titles. And it's like, I don't know. I want to play the classic games, especially if they put some of my favorite like PS2 games on there, but I don't know. But
it's not enough for you to get it. But my point is, because you may not experience it, I actually will get to experience it. And I can kind of tell you, hey, how does this feel? Like, how does this really experience and play? And I can give you and, of course, our listeners a chance to kind of tell, hey, maybe is this something that I'm interested in for the future or not?
Yeah. I mean, I'm looking forward to your impressions. I am going to try it out at first when it first comes out. But it's just a matter of, am I going to keep my subscription?
Of course. Now, one thing we have topics on our show that we always try to kind of, we plan our shows to a degree. We try to keep it rough and keep it conversational and that kind of thing. So we've got some topics that we always throw on here. They're more evergreen. We don't necessarily always think we're going to get to them, but hey, we'll throw it on there anyway. One of these is something that I was looking forward to asking you because I was very excited when I saw they were doing this. Lego had released recently a set from Horizon Zero Dawn. It was a tall neck.
Yeah.
And this thing looked super awesome. And honestly, like just the way a tall neck looks in particular, for some reason, just seems perfect for Lego, like, and the way Lego bricks kind of come together to form like these objects, right? It just looks like something that ought to be a Lego. And I think they did just a bang up job in designing this Lego set. My question, though, for you, sir, we'll start with you. You can bounce back to me. Is what would be your games to Lego dream set that we haven't already seen? So, like, no Sonic. I know you're a Sonic guy. No Sonic. No Mario. No Horizon Zero Dawn here. What would be a really cool set for you? And keep in mind, because Lego doesn't do like tanks and, you know, machine guns and all this kind of stuff. They don't do war things. So it's probably, you can't really name, I don't think you'd pick Call of Duty, but Call of Duty ruled out.
Yeah, and Halo has Mega Blocks already, and then Pokemon has its own thing, like Mega Constructs, I think they're called. So it's like some of them are already.
And Minecraft is Lego too.
They already have like some of them already have it, but I'm looking around. The first one that came to mind. I know this might go against like Legos. I mean, I guess there's killing in Horizon Zero Dawn as well, but
it's not that there can't be death. I mean, there's Wild West and stuff like that. There's medieval times, but I think they don't like the idea of like modern weapons of war.
But at the same time, the name of the series that I am thinking of is called Assassin's Creed. So I'm worried about the name there because like I think about like all the historical buildings that are in there, thinking about how like climbable they are. And like, you know, you could put like Ezio up at the top of the tower and it would be kind of cool. You know, you build up this huge tower and then you have your character like perched up on top of it. I think that's the one I'm going with, Assassin's Creed.
Okay. So what would the set be? Let's pick one out. What would you want it to be?
Oh man. I mean,
the tough part is there. It's actually real world locations, more or less, right? It's just you're kind of getting a little mini guy, right?
Basically, like so you build a real world location. You know, obviously have a hay bale at the bottom, but you would
need that.
You know, you just build like a historical building, and it comes a little guy. I don't know. I thought about this for 2 minutes.
No, that's all right.
Fine, you know what? Give me Persona.
Okay. No, this is good. Think like that. Yeah.
There's a lot of palaces and like different like kind of dungeons that are built that are really cool, like locations that are also based on real world locations as well. So like in Persona 5 Strikers, like Tokyo Tower is like transformed into like this different version. And like there's a school that's transformed into like a castle. And I think that would be really cool. Even if like it came with like the parts to build both components, like their school, and then it also transforms into the castle.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my pick. And it also has a lot of really recognizable characters, especially like Persona 5, Persona 4. They all have characters that like their costumes stand out from like, and you could tell who they are because it's not just like oh, that's a Lego character with a beard, so that must be this character. It's like, no, it's a character that like is rocking an all black suit with a mask on, or like a red like latex panther suit. Like,
So I never played Persona or the Persona series or anything like that. I know a lot of people love it. My question isn't like how is it and was it good, but color palette wise, it always seemed like it might be an interesting, like a lot of different types of colors that are striking colors, and that might make it for a really interesting Lego set. Is that fair?
oh,
accurate?
absolutely, yeah, 100%. Especially like if they could figure out some way to like incorporate the color palette of like the menus and the user interface into it, like that would be incredible.
Maybe some sort of background or something. Yeah,
some way to figure it out. I mean, I have Persona 5 figures, like the Figma line of characters, and they always come with really cool backgrounds and everything that play into that art style. But like the characters themselves are also very striking.
right.
But yeah, what about you?
For me, I'm torn. There's a couple of things that I think would be interesting. One, I think God of War would be interesting. That's another one where it's kind of like, okay, you're talking about Assassin's Creed, God of War. Are these things that they're going to want? I don't know, maybe not, but I think it would be fascinating because obviously you can make some giant, like even go all the way back to God of War original. You could have, Kratos with very little minifig Kratos going against the giant
the Hydra.
The Hydra, exactly. Make
that
the giant
cool.
Heads and that
with
kind
the
of
boat
thing.
and everything. Like that
I
would
think
be
that
a
would
really
be
cool set.
super cool. That would be an excellent set. Just imagine you build a Lego ship, which there's plenty of Lego pirate ships, right? And then you've got these Hydra heads coming out of it, and there's just for scale, there's little mini Kratos.
That would almost be too
super
cool
set, right? You can do a lot with that, like because the boss battles are so big in those games.
I didn't even think about like recreating the bosses in Lego form. Like that's a good, because that Persona also has a lot of really monstrous bosses as well.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's the moneymaker. I think is like cool boss fights is what I'm kind of
and like maybe like
head,
Bayonetta
right?
or something like that.
Sure.
Like
that
something with
sense.
like a bunch of like monsters that you fight.
Yeah, I like Bayonetta. I enjoyed that series.
Or what about Pokemon? I know Pokemon has a deal with something else, but what about Pokemon? But you're building like larger versions instead of just having like the Pokemon be like little minifigs. Build like larger versions of that, like
how they've had I think R2D2 or maybe Yoda over the years, that kind of thing. Yeah,
like Mega Constructs does a version of that, but like they're kind of simple. They're not like huge. Like I'm talking like let me build like a foot tall version of some character, or like a 2 foot tall version of like a Charizard or something.
Look, no offense to anything that's not Lego, but it's just not the quality that Lego is. So I'm always going to look, thumb my nose at it and look down upon it, what have you, whatever euphemism phrase you want to go with. But yeah, I think ultimately I want to see like Lego's take on it, because they've got the best designers, the best bricks, they stick together the best. It's just a better quality product. So I'm interested to see maybe something like that there. But so God of War was one. Mega Man, I think would be interesting. But that would be another thing where I think you're right. You want to see it not just as like minifigs, right? Because Lego Mega Man, it's not going to be that much, right? It's just not that appealing.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was just looking at like my amiibo figures and seeing like, is there any others? Splatoon might be a fun one.
Okay.
Nintendo already has the existing relationship to the Mario line of figures and everything. Can't even call those minifigs. Those are legit figures.
Right.
Splatoon would be fun because it's a lot of bright colors, a lot of really fun arenas that you could recreate, and then a lot of fun like vehicles that show up in the single player, and like creatures that show up in the single player that I think that would be a lot of fun to recreate. Like they have a lot of really great level designs that I think would be so much fun to see.
Were you a Lego kid?
I liked playing around. I never built like sets. Okay. I would always just like play around. Like I would like make houses out of like my grandmother had like a giant tub of Legos, and it was just loose Lego bricks. And I would go in and like, put down like the green like mat basically with like the pegs, so you could like have that be your grass, and I'd build like the foundation of a house and then build it up eventually to have a roof and everything. But
you didn't have much on your own, like at your house. You weren't just building Legos.
I was never I was actually a Playmobil kid.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Building castles and stuff. I would always take the coasters from restaurants, and those would be the rugs. And then like when Pizza Hut, like whenever we go to Pizza Hut, we would get like the little like 3-pronged thing in the middle that like holds all the slices in place, and I would use that as their dining room table.
That is wild, by the way, how much Pizza Hut was a part of your childhood.
Oh yeah, we love pizza at my house.
Well, you didn't grow up around in like tri-state area where I am. I'm from Jersey, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut to a degree too. That's where like the real pizza's at. But like,
Oh, for sure.
I think if I lived and grew up outside of there, or let's say now I would take my family and uproot them, and we're going to move into, let's say we're moving next door to you up in Minnesota, right? I'm probably ordering a lot more chain pizza than I am like local pizza. And that's no offense to the local places. I'm sure you can find good pizza, but I'm very snotty about it.
Dude, if you're ever up in Minnesota, I'm going to take you to the local places that will put the chain pizza places to shame.
But will it put my pizza to shame?
Of course
like
not.
Local pizza around
you live right next to New York City.
And New Jersey, by the way, it's the same pizza. Anybody who lives in Jersey, they know.
I'm just saying, you're in the blast radius of the best pizza in North America.
Of course. The heart of the best pizza. I'm gonna say, because pizza is different in Italy. It's like just a little bit. It's margarita pizza is really what they have there, right? It's just a little different than I think what we have here. And I've never been to Italy, but that was my understanding based on what my wife told me from going
maybe
there.
The best pizza I've ever had in my life was in Italy.
You've been to Italy?
Yes.
Oh, I'm jealous.
Like northern Italy, yeah. It was like
different Italy.
It was like 15 years ago, but it was so good. I just went like this back alley like cafe basically, and I was like, I really want pizza. I'd been eating pasta a lot, and it was super good.
I'm excited to go to Italy one day. I have relatives in Italy, in southern Italy. That's where my family comes from, and I'm very excited to stay there one day. They still message me every once in a while. They're like, "When are you coming to visit?" I'm like, "It would be great to come." Been a weird kind of couple years.
Yeah. I haven't done any international travel during the pandemic, so it's like I'm doing a bunch of domestic travel now. But like, yeah, I haven't gone through the process of like taking the COVID tests and like trying to keep it like, because every country has its own rules now.
Yeah,
and it's like, all right, how do we like what weird waters do we have to navigate just to let me into your country? And then like, am I going to get stranded there because am I going to like randomly test positive for COVID when I'm like on my return flight? It's like, oh, well, you have to stay there for 2 weeks now on your own dime. And it's like, don't know if I'm a big fan of that.
See, one thing I want to do is, and I've started the process and it's kind of stalled, but I started the process of collecting all of the necessary paperwork that I need to actually get birthright Italian citizenship.
Oh,
because it's a complex kind of nature to how you can get it, but essentially it has to do with, as long as you can get it through like your paternal line and no one like renounced their citizenship along the way or whatever. I'm eligible, if I understand correctly. I just need to get everyone's birth certificates and everyone's marriage certificates and death certificates and everything just to prove who these people are that I'm related to. And I've made some progress, so that would be nice to have a second passport that gets me into Europe much easier.
Yeah.
You never know what's going to happen with this country. It's been a weird world.
I have a friend who's been looking into that for Poland because she has family in Poland, and she's like, yeah, considered getting like, it'd be nice to have like an entryway into the EU in case things go down here.
Even just to make it easier to go places that maybe it's tougher to go to. Like, I think there was a time, and I'm not saying I would have even done this, but like Cuba, U.S. citizens can't go there, but people from other certain countries, it's not as bad. What if I had a passport that allowed me to go to somewhere like that? I don't know. It'd just be interesting to have, just really to have access to it. I feel like it can't hurt.
To put a bow on our gaming talk, our gaming proper talk, let's flip the script here on the Lego idea.
Okay.
There's a Lego series of video games. We've had Lego Indiana Jones, Lego Star Wars.
Love these Lego games. Yeah.
Lego, all kinds of Lego Marvel stuff, Lego DC.
Lego Star Wars had just come out. Again, they've done a billion of them, but they released the Skywalker Saga. I'm very excited to play that, by the way.
I started episode 1 and I'm having a really good time with it.
Cool.
But what series, because we talked about what game would you want to see made into a Lego, what game series do you want a Lego version of their video game?
Ninja Turtles. I have told the developers this several times when I've test played these games, or like not test played, but gone for like media of
like hands-on.
Hands-on. Thank you. The terminology comes much better from you, sir. But yeah, every time I see them, I'm like, you really need a Ninja Turtles game. And for a while, it seemed like they had access to that because there were at least proper Legos being made by Lego with Ninja Turtles. They don't have that license anymore. But I was very hopeful in the time that they had it. I'm like, make a Lego game. Please make a Ninja Turtle Lego game. I really want one so bad. And it's pipe dream now, but I really want it, and I'm never going to give it up.
So we had Lego Dimensions already.
Right.
And that included Portal, that included Simpsons, that included Sonic the Hedgehog. So I'm ruling all of those out.
Yeah.
I think all of those would be fun to get a full Lego game, like Lego Portal. Like, yeah, sign me up for that. Lego Sonic, that would be incredible. I'm going the other way, though. A license that Lego already has. They just need to probably get developer approval to design a game. Lego Super Mario Brothers.
Okay.
It can combine elements of Mario Maker. It can combine the platforming element of the mainline Mario series. Just give us the Lego aesthetic. Let people build their own levels, build their own like boss fights and everything. Again, you're taking some elements from Mario Maker, but like I think that there's a way to do that in the Lego aesthetic that would be super fun.
I think so too. I mean, it's not the one I would have thought of, but I could see them making that work really well. Yeah, obviously, that problem with that though is it's limited in scope because you can't make it multi-system. It would be correct. Nintendo exclusive. So yeah, that one seems almost like more of a pipe dream than what I'm suggesting.
But hey, the Switch is the top selling console right now.
It's true. I'm not saying I don't want it. I'm just saying I almost think that they'll look at that and be like, well, I don't know if we can make enough money off of it. So
I'm just saying there's been over 100 million Switches sold.
Is that right? It's over 100 million now?
It's outsold the Wii.
That's right. I didn't know that. Okay. That makes sense. Where does it rank now overall? So like I think PlayStation 2 is the number one selling console of all time, correct?
So where does the PlayStation 2 is number one. The DS is number 2. Game Boy Color and Game Boy, they combined that for some reason, is number 3. PlayStation 4 is number 4. The Nintendo Switch is only 10 million behind the PS4 at number 5.
Okay.
So it's about to, I mean, it blew past PS1, it blew past Wii, it blew past PS3 and Xbox 360 most recently. So yeah, I mean, it's outsold the PS1, it's outsold the Wii, which I never thought would happen. I thought that was going to forever be Nintendo's highest selling game console. But
you know what helps is now they have the multiple types of Switches, and I think there's got to be something to this too. If you have multiple children, let's say, and they want their own Switches, I could see how that could happen.
I mean, the same thing could be said about the DS.
Sure. Oh, absolutely. 100%.
About the PlayStation 2.
That's why Game Boy would make a lot of sense as having to have that too, because you had multiple kids that needed it. It's anytime you have it's a handheld console, and yeah, you can play Switch on your TV. But I think for one, play almost exclusively on handheld, right?
I play almost exclusively on TV.
Oh, it's the other way around.
Yeah. Which, by the way, most of the top selling systems are handheld, I'm noticing. So DS is number 2, Game Boy Color is number 3. And then you get, I mean, there's a run of consoles. I mean, Switch is a hybrid. Game Boy Advance, PlayStation Portable, 3DS, those are all in the top 10. So like there's something to that theory that it's because people are buying multiple, but also let's not hide the fact that I had to buy 7 Xbox 360s and also I had to buy 3 or 4 PS2s because disc read error.
You bought 7 Xbox 360s?
Well, thankfully, some of them were returns because I had a lifetime warranty through Costco. But yeah, I had every problem under the sun, aside from the Red Ring of Death.
I never got the Red Ring of Death, but everything else went wrong?
Everything else, yeah.
That is wild. I never had an Xbox, but I knew people who had the Red Ring of Death. On my PS3, though, I had the yellow light of death, which was a similar issue. And I tried to fix it because there was a way to do it. It was like there was like soldering involved, and I've never soldered anything since in high school. I did a little soldering, I guess, in class.
This is the PS3 you're talking?
Yeah, I almost fixed it. I turned it on for like a hot 90 seconds, and then it died again. But I felt briefly accomplished, and it was taken from me.
Dude, I remember I traded an Xbox 360 that I had new in box with somebody who had a used PS3 that was used, but it was one of the backward compatible ones. Okay. So I was like, okay, well, I'll trade you like a new.
Mine
Xbox
was backwards compatible too, yeah.
And like I found somebody online who wanted to trade it, and I sent them that, and then they sent me the PS3, and it didn't work. It had the yellow light of death. And I was like, all right, well, I guess I'm screwed because like there's no way this person's gonna like give me my Xbox back, give me my money back or whatever. So I got in touch with him, and he actually did give me some money. Like he's like, all right, well, yeah, like, you know, keep the games that I sent you, but here's like $250 or something like that. towards like a PlayStation 3 that you want to buy. And I'm like,
All
oh,
right.
that was actually a positive interaction.
I actually sold. That is good. I like that. But I actually sold my Yellow Light of Doom or Death PS3 within the last couple of years. As advertised, broken. Everyone knows it. People buy these on eBay and they like to try and fix them. So I sold mine for, I don't know, probably $70-$80 or something like that. It was decent money for a broken console that came out at that point 12 years ago.
Yeah, I feel like there was a huge market in that space back in like the mid to late 2000s.
Yes. Yeah, I think so too.
But Scott, we're coming up on how like the end of this episode. We had talked about this quite a bit over the last 9 weeks. We wanted to give our spoiler-free thoughts on the Halo TV series.
Yes. Yeah, I think
and
it's time.
Had most episodes we would give our spoiler-free talk of like, all right, well, here's what we thought of this episode, here's what we thought of this episode. We missed a few weeks, but I think we trailed off
as the season went, and I think we can get into more why very shortly. But we got to give everybody the warning, right?
Yeah. So we're done talking about MMA. We're done talking about games. So if that's the end of this episode for you, because we're going to get into spoiler territory here,
very much a spoiler warning, everybody.
Yeah, then thank you so much for listening. But if you are going to stick around for the spoiler talk of the Halo Paramount Plus TV series, then I guess, Scott, let's get your overall impressions here of like, what did you think of the first season? Because they've already confirmed a second season for us, and I believe there's a multi-year plan in place to bring this entire arc to fruition. But what did you think about season 1 of Halo Paramount Plus?
Very unbalanced is what initially comes to mind, because there are, and I was telling some friends over the weekend about the show because they were curious, like, hey, what'd you think of it? And I said, look, there's like 3 episodes that are pretty action heavy. Mm-hmm. And I think those are the highlights of the whole season by far, because really when you think of a Halo TV series, you think, okay, I want them shooting out with the Covenant, right? And using all these funky alien weaponry and all that kind of thing. And you got that here and there. You got it in the first episode. There was a really banging way to start the whole series, really set what seemed like setting a tone, but was really not. And then you had a few episodes. I think the midpoint episode, episode 4 or 5?
Yeah, there was a huge battle.
I want to say that was the highlight of the whole season, right?
I would agree.
And then, of course, they end it with one. But in the middle, there's a lot of either mystery building with no action or following storylines that you're just not that invested in.
Nobody cared about Quan and Soren. Like, I liked the actors, but
I love Bokeem Woodbine.
They just did a terrible job with that storyline, and it ended up having almost no consequence to the overall story arc. And they devoted an entire episode to them.
Literally a whole episode that had no actual Master Chief in the episode. Like, there's kind of, sort of it, but not really.
So she had a dream and like a hallucination that she was fighting him, which finally, that was ironically the best representation of Master Chief in the entire series, of like just kind of like this intimidating, imposing figure that like you could hit in the face with like a hammer or whatever she was hitting him with, and like he just like barely flinch.
Yeah, I never got that sense from the way Master Chief was portrayed. May not necessarily be the fault of Pablo Schreiber.
No, Pablo Schreiber actually did a very capable job. It's just the material they gave him. They deviated. And I don't have a problem with them deviating in these adaptations away from the main character points. However, like, you want the fantasy here, right? The fantasy of, oh my God, they're adapting my favorite comic book, my favorite video game. They're adapting it to live action. You want to see it on the big screen, right? You want to see these characters that you've grown to love. Like, that's the thing about like a Marvel character coming to the big screen. It's like, oh my God, they're doing Miss Marvel. She's getting her own Disney Plus series. And it's like, because you have such an affection for that character and that story arc and her powers and all this other stuff, you're excited to see it brought to life in a way that, no matter how great the comics are, they just can't accomplish the immersion that a live action representation of that exists in our world. That's supposed to be our world that you are seeing in these shows and these movies and everything. that's taking your immersion and like your relationship with these characters to a whole new level. Same thing with people who are excited for like the Avengers video game that we've talked about a couple times on the show.
Sure.
You want to see these characters done justice, and they do to varying degrees, but the game itself was just not very good. When you get to a Halo TV series, there are certain elements that you want to see transferred over, but I'm fine with them taking some liberties. One of the core elements you want to see them get right is the handling of the main character of the series, and they just didn't do that. Like, there are certain parts of Master Chief that they did great. I think the suit of armor, when he's wearing it, which is not very often,
no, it's not,
looks amazing. The action, when he is in action and he's fighting the Covenant, or he's fighting in some cases other Spartans, he is a total badass. And that's what you want to see Master Chief. You want to see him plowing through waves of Covenant the way you've seen it happen in the games. Like, you've gone through, you've done those fights.
It's got to be a wrecking ball.
Yeah, you want to see Master Chief just ripping through these enemies. And he does that. When it happens, he does it great. And like the budget for these fight scenes are incredible. There's a couple of times where like the CGI like just looks like total garbage, but they're, on the whole,
I almost expect that out of TV.
But on the whole, it looks great. Like they did a great job. Like, a lot of the battle scenes look fantastic. Like, you could tell they poured some money into the show. Unfortunately, Master Chief did not have his helmet on most of the time, which, whatever. Like, you want to do a different storyline involving Master Chief. It's non-canonical. Go for it. But it's like, I look at him and I'm like, that's not Master Chief. He doesn't have his helmet on. Like, yeah, it felt like a different character altogether. I think,
but that does get tricky though. It just, not to cut you off, but it does get tricky because I think of like a show like The Mandalorian where they do have the character with his helmet on all the time. That's not easy. That's really not easy. And then if he did have it on the whole time, I mean, do people start to be like, well, are you just trying to go for a Mandalorian type of thing here? And it gets people think it's derivative, maybe. I don't know.
But the Halo came 20 years before The Mandalorian.
Sure, of course. I don't disagree there. But it definitely makes it a much more challenging thing to emote, with this character,
But you got to trust your actor in that case.
That's true.
The Mandalorian, you see his emotions through that helmet.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that in the scenes that Master Chief was emoting in this series, when he had his helmet on, it worked. Like, when he's back at his childhood home and he's like, he has to have his helmet on for the sake of seeing Cortana's like projection of like what the past looked like. He emoted just fine in those moments. And I think that they need to trust the actor to keep his helmet on. And, some places it makes sense to take the helmet off, right? Not necessarily in the context of the games, because he doesn't take his helmet off in the games, really. However, in the context of the show, it did make sense for him to take his helmet off. Like, he walks up to his childhood home. I'm sure he wants to take his helmet off and like breathe in the air and like just kind of enjoy like being in that space. However, like, when he's just like walking around the space station, it's like, no, keep your helmet on, dude. Like, as good as like an actor as Pablo Schreiber is, I don't think that they did a great job like utilizing his talents as the Master Chief. They did a good job of utilizing his talents as kind of like a fully grown teenage boy going through puberty, is basically what they portrayed in this first season.
I guess, yeah.
It's like, all right, yeah, he's feeling emotions for the first time.
Coming of age tale.
He's feeling in love for the first time. And it's like, all right, yeah, we're basically going through puberty with Master Chief, which feels really weird and gross to see. And also, we saw his ass a lot more than we needed to, I think, during the course of the show.
Yeah. I don't require butts, but I guess people have them, so it happens.
Also, I didn't have a real problem with the love story that happened in this, because I thought that they started to go a really interesting place with it. And like, at the end of the penultimate episode, I was like, all right, I'm interested in where they're going with this.
With Master Chief and McKee, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And then they really didn't go anywhere interesting with it in the finale. And that was
like, it's like they did it and then they just wanted to cut it off. Like, they gave it to you just so they could rip it away.
Like, I really liked that scene where like, the UNSC forces kind of like realized that she was a traitor initially, and they started electrocuting her with like the little like lightning rod stick.
Mm-hmm.
And then she grabs the artifact and transports her and Master Chief to like the Halo ring, and like where they kind of had like their first embrace, and she's like, goodbye, John. And he's like, what? And then like, that was kind of like, oh man, that was kind of cold blooded, and we're going to get like McKay unleashed, and I was like, all right, well, this is going to be kind of a cool like final episode. And then they did some cool stuff with it, but largely it was like a letdown, I thought.
Where do you like? Do you think that they left off at a decent point?
No, it felt like the end of an episode, not the end of a season.
Okay, yeah, I kind of did too.
And also, the thing that a lot of people are upset about is that Master Chief never does that in the game, giving Cortana full control and just like kind of letting her run the show. So the fact that it left us with Master Chief being completely out of control of his body and Cortana's just controlling his entire existence right now, that's something that he wouldn't have done. And that's not something that we want to see going forward. The only reason that would be something that would be good going forward is if it gives us kind of the stoic Master Chief that we know from the games. Because right now, that's not the Master Chief we know from the games. What we know from the games is kind of like, and I've talked to the voice actor of Master Chief in the game, Steve Downs. He's actually a morning talk DJ, I think in Chicago is where he's based.
Interesting.
And he's like a rock DJ. And he's compared him to some of like Clint Eastwood's old characters, like in the old movies, the old Clint Eastwood movies.
Okay.
Where it's like, he's a man of few words, but when he talks, you know something is about to happen or something's about to go down and everybody listens. And that is not the Master Chief that we got in this series. And it's funny.
That would take a fundamental change in the way they approach the character in the show, I think, to get to there, right?
So I after one of the episodes where like Master Chief just didn't have his helmet on at all, and like it didn't feel like the character at all, I tweeted, "The Halo TV series really bugs me." And you know who liked that tweet?
Who?
Marcus Leto, who is the co-creator of the Halo series and the co-creator of he's the creator of Master Chief, basically. He was the art director of Bungie back in the day.
Okay.
He's no longer at Bungie, obviously, or 343, but
or wouldn't be probably doing that, yeah.
But yeah, and like people have like there's a lot of people who have been with the Halo franchise for a long time, like not just as creators, but as fans.
Sure.
And it's just like, man, like it's just disappointing to see this universe that they've clearly put a lot of time and a lot of effort into understanding the universe, but they didn't put a lot of time and effort into understanding the characters. The sole character that comes over from the games, actually, there's two characters that they got really right from the games.
And this is important for me because obviously I think I mentioned on the show, but I don't believe I mentioned it in this conversation. I didn't really play the storylines of the games. I've played a little multiplayer here and there, but I don't have a relationship with the story or the characters really.
So the characters they got right: Catherine Halsey,
okay,
who's portrayed by Natasha McElhone. I don't know if that's the right way to pronounce her last name, but she is best known from Californication. She was.
I know you're a fan of that show.
I love that show, so it was really cool to see her in that role, and she did an amazing job. So I think she's might be one of the shining spots of the show. I think
she's a good villain. Yeah, I think
fantastic actress. She gets the feeling of that character, even if maybe the character is a little bit more sinister in the TV show than the games. But
is that right? Okay,
not to a ridiculous degree. It's not like that. Like she's not the big bad of the Halo games, but she's definitely done some morally dubious things over the course of her experiments in the games as well.
That seems mildly the case in terms of what happened in the show. But yeah.
So she did a great job. And then Cortana is fantastic. And that's largely because they got the voice actress who portrays Cortana in the games to do it in the show. They got Jen Taylor, who I've also interviewed about her role as Cortana. And, she knows that character inside and out. It's almost like how they got Colleen O'Shaughnessy to come from her time in voicing Tails in the video games and in the TV show over to voicing Tails in Sonic the Hedgehog 2, the movie. It's like I asked Paramount, hey, why did you do this? And they said, nobody knows this character like Colleen does. And I feel like they knew that because that's the voice you hear the most in the Halo games is Cortana's voice. So I think they may have even done tests of like, all right, how do we get like a different voice in here? But people know that voice so well inside and out that I feel like there's no way around recasting Cortana when Jen Taylor is the voice of Cortana.
Okay.
So those are the two characters they really nailed from the games. The Covenant actually look and like feel really good when they're in battle, right? Like they did a great job with those character models, and I think that like they showed as an imposing, especially in that first battle scene. Like there was like, oh my god, like the Covenant are a legit problem.
Yeah,
and that's how they felt at the start of the first Halo game. Like when you saw an elite in the first Halo game, it was like, oh no, like things are about to go down. Like this is like a battle now. But like later on in the Halo series, it's like, all right, I figured out these guys. But like the first time you encounter an elite in Halo Combat Evolved, that's what it felt like. It felt like this big imposing threat. And they nailed that in the first scene of Halo.
I forgot it was Halo Combat Evolved. I forgot about the subtitle there. That was wild. Yeah, so ultimately, like, I guess you're looking at it from a straight fan perspective, especially. It's hard to remove yourself from that, I would think. But
it is, but as an adaptation, I think that even that, like, it falls short in a lot of ways. Because there's a lot, again, we've talked about it. There's a lot of storylines we just don't give a crap about. Like,
yes,
the Quan and Soren storyline doesn't really do anything for us.
It was too far flung. Yeah, is part of the problem. It didn't feel integrated enough or interesting.
Yeah, and like it was so self-contained at the end of the day. It was just like, what was this for? Like, was it just to give us like additional human characters to care about? Because like instead it kind of did the opposite. I didn't care about the human characters. I will say that the character of Kai really grew on me. She was the Spartan that also removed her emotions chip, and she really became like one of the stars of the show for me.
Okay,
I thought she was great.
I think she was good too. I did like kind of, especially later on, they play the stoicism of the other two Spartans whose names escape me right now. They played them kind of as like dry comedy, you know, the straight men and women in kind of the comedic aspects of it, which, you know, it's not like it's a comedy, but they at least made it for like some interesting I guess contrast there, and it made for some interesting moments. So I appreciated the kind of the dynamic between that little team there.
Absolutely. And seeing them all suit up as like they went to the final battle, like that was a really cool moment. And like I said this because at Game Informer we did an episode by episode spoiler filled review.
Okay,
if you want like really in-depth stuff, you can go seek that out. But like I said this on the final episode where it's like where they were suiting up and then they get down to like that temple that when it was swung out, it looked about as good as the 1995 Mortal Kombat movie when you fought Reptile. Like that was about as good as the CGI looked when they pulled back real far. But when they zoomed in on the Covenant, they looked amazing. But like the CGI looks terrible in that scene where like the Covenant are kind of like approaching the sandy temple. But like as the Spartans are like they're like picking off the Covenant one by one as they're like trying to stealthily approach, it's like, oh man, this is the Halo I wanted. Like this is the experience of Halo that I've wanted to see adapted to live action since I played the first game back in like 2002. And yeah, like we finally got that scene, and then like they took some weird directions with it at the end of the day, but it was ultimately the Halo scenes that I wanted were the battle scenes, and those were good. All three of like the big battle scenes were great.
I think what I would like to have seen ultimately from this show is those 3 episodes they did with the big battle scenes, the big interesting scenes and stuff like that. It would be interesting if they had found just like ways here and there in most episodes, even if it's not every single episode, but most episodes, to find some sort of way to have like conflict going on, right? Where Master Chief's doing something, even just a little bit of a thing. Because I think of, let's go with like the Witcher series, right? With Netflix, which, you know, if you talk to big Witcher fans, Jan Blachowicz in particular, big Witcher fan, hates with a passion the Witcher television series on Netflix. But give the series this is just about every episode you have Geralt in there and he's battling something. There's some sort of conflict going on, even if it's brief, right?
Yeah.
Just to have a little bit there, just kind of whet the appetite, I guess, so to speak. It doesn't have to be like a serialized, oh, you're going into one battle, oh, you're going into another battle, that kind of thing. But just let the action kind of birth what else is going on. Even just, again, whet my appetite for what I want in Halo, which is, again, I want to see him pretty much shooting up things while also building the lore, building that world. I was intrigued by a lot of the things that were being built up in this season, and I'm interested to see where a lot of this goes. But again, if they're going to drag things out because of budgetary constraints and you're only getting a few episodes here and there where there's actual like big action going on, then I don't know. It's definitely not going to necessarily keep me much longer. I'll probably give it next season 2 to kind of go with it, but let's put it on thin ice, I guess, for me.
Yeah, I think that I'm debating if I'm in a wait and see feeling for the second season. Like, am I going to subscribe to Paramount Plus? Because I'm probably not going to subscribe to Paramount Plus much longer. I only resubscribed to watch this for work.
Right.
And I might, like, if if season 2 starts, I might give it the first couple of episodes and see how I'm feeling about it, and then make my decision there. Or I might even just not subscribe and then hear how people are talking about it on social media. Like, oh, Halo season 2 is amazing so far. Then I might.
Then you'll jump aboard. Yeah, just binge back in. Yeah,
I'm already caught up on season 1. I'm not going to rewatch that. So like, I don't have any work to do. So it's like, if people say, hey, it's really good, actually, I could get through a couple episodes in an afternoon and then be caught up and then be like, all right, cool. Now I can be part of like the zeitgeist again. If like people actually,
yeah, right.
If people end up like being like, hey, like this show is actually really good now. Like, I hope they go, because it seems like they were really taking a lot of cues from Game of Thrones in terms of like their pacing and like the way they doled out the action less frequently.
Not every series is meant to do that.
Exactly. And like there were certain scenes where I'm like, this feels ripped straight out of like a Game of Thrones style show. I think they need to, like, going back to Mandalorian, I think they need to take a Mandalorian approach where it's like, all right, there's always some sort of action. There's always some sort of like self-contained quest in the Mandalorian episodes. And then those self-contained quests go on to serve the overarching arc that reveals itself over the course of the season. I think Halo would be better served for that instead of just like, all right, this episode, we're all going to be talking in a room together. And this episode,
all episode long.
And you might get a scene of like, all right, here's a needler, like the needler weapon, or here's like a battle rifle that you recognize from the games, or here's like,
we're driving around the Warthog.
Yeah, we're driving around in a Warthog. That's how we're getting from point A to point B. And that's like your one nod to the Halo series. It's like, oh my God, don't drip feed the Halo references. Like, we're watching a Halo TV series. Just let us go all in on the Halo universe and the Halo characters.
Some sort of cool like Warthog chase scene, I think, would have been really cool. Like where they're like having a shootout in the car, even if it's just for like a few minutes, right? It doesn't need to be the whole episode, but just something to kind of get my blood pumping into this and like really watch something cool like there. They lost a lot of the cool factor of things that they could have had. And they decided, you know what, we're, like you said, drip feed them and parse them out. And it really, I don't think it worked to do that.
Yeah, I hope it's kind of like how I felt about Assassin's Creed and Uncharted after I played the first entries of those games, where I was like, all right, there's something cool here. They haven't quite figured it out, but there's something cool here. And then we see Uncharted 2, and then we see Assassin's Creed 2, and we are like, okay, these are amazing games, some of the best of the generation. Hopefully that's what happens with the Halo TV series. Hopefully, like, they find, like, they take the feedback to heart. Like Paramount, by the way, Paramount, the company that also did the Sonic the Hedgehog movie, they saw the fan feedback on that first character design.
They did listen.
And they took it to heart. They changed it. And look at how successful Sonic 1 and Sonic 2 are now. And we're getting a Sonic cinematic universe. Hopefully Paramount sees the fan feedback to the Halo TV series, takes it to heart, and makes those changes for Halo Season 2. And we end up with an amazing Halo series that we all want it to be.
Yeah, I mean, that'd be interesting. I hope we get that. But you know what? I think we're done. I think we probably covered as much as we needed to in our little spoiler.
Real quick, before we wrap up, what is your score? What is your score on this Halo Season 1?
Ooh,
out of 10. And we're gonna do it. We're gonna do it like the video game review score.
Okay, fine. That's for actual content reviews. That makes sense. But maybe with fights we'll do like a 5-star kind of thing.
Okay.
All right.
Anyway, just introduce as many scales as we possibly can. Our listeners will love that.
I love it. I think this is the best way to do things. I would say out of 10.
So that's fine. If you want to do a 5-star scale for fights, let's do a 5-star scale for our reviews as well here.
Yeah, whatever.
What is your 5 stars? 5 stars. What is your score for the Halo TV series episode or season 1?
5-star. I'm going to call it 3 out of 5.
That's where I'm thinking as well. On the Game Informer scale of 10, I gave it a 6.5. I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5 here, which translates to about a 6 out of 10.
That's it feels right. It's like okay, I didn't hate my time with it, but also it really didn't transcend anything. Yeah, most of the time.
When we had the one episode where it didn't have Master Chief in it at all, I hated that time.
That was a low point. I think you take that episode out and maybe it even bumps it up a half star.
Maybe, but
it just might.
I think that's a good rundown of that show.
Yeah, I think that's it, man. I think we covered it. So if you like this show, make sure you subscribe. Apple, Spotify, YouTube. We're all over the place. Hope you're enjoying this. And while you're at it, would you kindly subscribe to our social handles at Brian P. Shea and at Scott_Fontana on Twitter and Instagram.
And you always know that you can hit us up with questions, feedback, topics you'd like to hear about, just letting us know what you're hyped about. Hit us up. groundandponepod@gmail.com or at groundandpwned on Twitter. Until next time, enjoy the fights, enjoy the games. Thank you so much for listening. We will talk to you next week.